Hi again, Mark here from TalkingBass.net. In this lesson, I'm going to look at one of the biggest problems that we bass players face in learning how to improvise and solo, especially through a chord progression. The problem of always focusing on the root note of the chord. All the lesson material for this video can be found over at TalkingBass.net. There's a PDF and a backing track available to download. Just follow the link in the info below. And while you're there, have a look at the other lessons on the lesson map, and if you subscribe for free, you'll gain access to a whole load of other bass resources like the Scale Reference Guide ebook. So go check it out. Okay, so one of the biggest problems that I find in teaching students how to improvise or solo through chord changes is the tendency to jump straight to the root note of each chord. And it actually happens on a much more basic level where you might even just be soloing over one chord. So let's say the chord is a simple C major. The tendency for bass players is to just jump straight to that C, the root note. And it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. You see the note C on the chord symbol and you just jump straight to it. It's hard not to. But one of the other reasons we as bass players find it really hard to shake this off is because of our functional role in a band, which is to usually outline the root movement of the chords. So let's take a simple chord progression of C major, A minor, D minor, G7. Okay, 1, 6, 2, 5 in C major. If we create a bass line for that progression, we're going to go for the root notes, C, A, D, and G. We might mess around a little and put a few passing notes in there to join it all up and get a smooth line going, but the root movement is our primary concern. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's our role. But that means that we spend most of our time as bass players being calibrated into hitting root notes. We don't really look at the other chord tones in there. So when it comes time to take a solo, our main instinct is to always just go back to that root note. So why is this a problem? Well, for a start, it's pretty repetitive and boring to just keep doing that. If you were to hit the root note as the start for every single phrase that you played, it's all going to sound predictable. You should be able to start a phrase from any chord tone and be able to freely move around without feeling locked into a kind of movable capo type finger pattern as you move from one chord to the next. Another problem with overdoing it with the root note is that the root notes for each chord have no real spice to them. They're what you might call boring. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't ever land on a root note, but the other chord tones are much more colourful. When learning to improvise, you really need to develop a good ear for the sound and tonal colour of every chord tone so that you can employ them in whatever way you want. Now, if that makes no sense at the moment, you'll hear what I mean by this tonal colour when you work through the exercise that I'm about to show you. So for this exercise, we're going to take a simple 1, 6, 2, 5 progression in the key of C major. So that's C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. And we're just going to be playing single notes on each chord, 2 bars for each. Now, because this is a soloing exercise, we'll try it up here above the 12th fret. So remember that these notes up here are just the same as these notes down here. The fret markers, they're exactly the same notes as down here. So just as a quick refresher on this position here, let's just run quickly up a C major scale, starting at this C on the 15th fret of the A string. So just play a C major scale, just up and down. Okay, so you want that basic C major scale there, and then I want you to go below the root note. So when you come back down, we go down to the B, the A, the G, and the F. Okay? And then once you've gone down to the F, you can run back up to the C. So we're beginning and ending on the C, and this is just to familiarise you with the notes in this position. So this is exactly the same as if we played the C major scale down here. And then if we drop below there. So it gives us all the notes in that key in that position. So we're just playing it up here. So once again, C major up and down. Okay, and you want to run through those notes as well. So we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F. And then back, okay? So that's the palette of notes that we're using for the overall key there in that position. So for the first exercise, we'll just run through the root notes for each chord, okay? So let's work through the chord progression. So we had C major 7, so we want C. so there's a C, 15th fret of the A string. Then A minor 7, 2, 1 and A, so there's an A on the E string, 17th fret. Then D minor 7, so now we want a D, so there's another one, 17th fret of the A string. And then G7, so we want a G, so there's a G, 15th fret of the E string. So we have C, A, D, G. So we're just playing the root notes, okay? So this is just the same as if we played it down here, C, A, D, G, but we're playing it up the octave there. So I'll work through with the backing track. So each chord is for 2 bars, and we'll just play single notes on there, 1 each bar, okay? So with the track. C, A, D, G. Okay. So that's a pretty straightforward and fairly dull exercise. So let's add a little rhythm in there just to save our own sanity. Now you can play any rhythm that you want, because at the end of the day this is more to do with improvisation, but I'll give you a simple sample rhythm just to help you out. So once again with the backing track, and this time with a little rhythm. A, D, G. Okay? So now let's expand a little bit with those root notes, and we'll put some root notes in on the D and the G strings, okay? So for the C, we could start up here at the 17th fret of the G string. Then for the A, we could go there for the 14th fret of the G string. Now for the D, it runs a little bit out of position either way. So you can either go for the D 12th fret of the D string, or you can work up here at the 19th fret of the G string. Either one is fine. And then for the G, we've got the 17th fret of the D string, okay? So once again, I'll try with the backing track, and I'll just put some of those higher register notes in. That's the low D. High D. And obviously you can mix those up in whatever way you want. So we could start C there, then go for the A there, come down for the D, down for the G, any way that you want. You need to have complete control over which one that you're going to be going for. So that's the easy part, and that's usually the way that most bass players would think when starting out with improvisation. Now obviously you might not just be playing only the root notes, you might mess around in a scale or an arpeggio, but the starting note and focus would initially be on that root note. So for exercise 2, let's try playing the third of each chord. Now this is where knowing the intervallic construction of each chord is absolutely essential. Now you can always go and check out all my chord construction lessons over at TalkingBass.net. They're in the Music Theory for Bass series, and I'd also advise you to probably check out the intervals lessons as well. But don't worry too much, because we've only got 3 chords to think about. We've got the major 7, the minor 7 and the dominant 7. So we've got C major 7, A minor 7 and D minor 7, they're the minor 7s, and then G7. So when I say G7, that's a dominant 7 chord, okay? So the intervallic makeup of those, we have C major 7, so a major 7 chord, and any major 7 chord is made up of the root note, major 3rd, perfect 5th, and the major 7, okay? So 1, 3, 5, 7. The dominant 7 chord is pretty much the same, it's like a major chord there, but with a flattened 7. So we have the root note, the major 3rd, the perfect 5th, and the minor 7, or the flat 7 on the top. And then for the minor 7, we have the root note, the minor 3rd, the the perfect fifth, and the minor 7. Okay, so that's 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7. Okay, so that's all you need to know in terms of the actual construction of those chords, and there will be the intervals that we'll be using with these exercises. So don't worry if all of that's too much information to take in right now. This exercise will help you remember all those chord tone intervals really quickly. So let's work through that chord progression again. So we start on C major 7. So first of all, let's just look for the C. So there's the C. And it's a major 7 chord, so if we're going to pick out the third, we want a major third. So a major 7 chord has a major third. So we need to look at a major third interval. Now, if you don't know your major third interval, C to E. It's that little pattern there. Okay, so think working up 3 notes of the major scale. C, D, E. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So that there is a major third interval. So just think of it, you know, even just visually on the fretboard, as the second finger there on the C, and then the first finger on the next fret down on the next string. Okay, so that's the major third. So once you can see that pattern, you just want to ignore the root note and just go for the third. Okay, so you want to see all of these chord tones relative to that root note. So see the root note and then see which interval it's going to be. So as we work through them, the third, the fifth, and the seventh, you'll want to see the third as that pattern in relation to the root note. The fifth, you know, see that fifth pattern, and then for the seventh, you know, see that pattern. Okay, so that's what you need to do. You need to be able to visualize those interval patterns. So we go for the E there. So now let's just work through the other chords. So the next one is A minor 7. So a minor 7 chord has a minor third. So we want to find a minor third interval. So find the A, and then we want a minor third. So just to help you out there, a minor third interval is the same as a major third interval, but we just drop that top note down 1. Okay, so the root note being the bottom note there. So there's the A. So think of a major interval there. Just drop that top note, the C sharp, down to the C. Okay, so that little pattern there is a minor third interval. Okay, so we want to pick out the C, and that's the third. Okay, so now let's move on to D minor 7. So again, find the D. Okay, so there it is, and then we just play the minor third from there. So using the pattern that we've just used, find the minor third, which is an F. Okay, so that's the note that we're looking for. Next, G7. So a G7, that's a dominant 7 chord. The third in there is a major third. Okay, so in terms of these thirds, think major 7 and dominant 7. They both have a major third because they're both built from a major triad. So they're both major type chords. Okay, so major 7, dominant 7 have a major third. The minor 7, think minor, that has a minor third. So we find the G, and then we want a major third. So just think back to that major third pattern. Okay, and there it is, it's a B. Okay, so that's the note we're going to be looking for. So all together we have C major 7, we're going to play the E. A minor 7, we're going to play the C. D minor 7, we're going to play the F. And then G7, we're going to play the B. That's it. Okay, so that's the third for each chord. So let's try that with the backing track. As before, we can try mixing up the register of them as well. So this time I will stick strictly to the D and the G string. So if we have the E there again on the for the C, then for the A minor 7 we can try the C up here. Okay, so try and see that A as the root note and just see that minor third pattern there. Okay, so we've got E, then the C. So then for the D minor 7, we can just use the F again, just there on the D string. And then for the G7, we can use the B up there at the, the 16th fret of the G string. Okay, so we have E, C, F, and B. Okay, so with the backing track. So you can hear there how much more emotive those thirds can be. They have more colour and they seem to hint more at some melodic direction. And by comparison, the root notes are pretty bland. So let's have a listen to the difference. So the first time round I'll play root notes and the second time round I'll play thirds. For exercise 3, we'll try exactly the same thing, but this time we're going to try playing fifths, okay? So we're going to look for the fifth of each chord. So we already know that the major 7, the minor 7 and the dominant 7, they all have the same kind of fifth, the perfect fifth, okay? So it's not like with the thirds where we have to figure out whether it's got a major or a minor third. These are all the same. So we can just take that same pattern, that perfect fifth pattern, and then just move it through the chord progression. So C major 7 first, so we find the C, we've got that perfect fifth pattern, so there we have a G, okay, so the G is the note we'll be playing. Then A minor 7, A, we've got the fifth there, E, so we'll be playing an E over the A minor 7. Then D minor 7, we've got an A, so we'll be playing an A, and then for G7, we've got the D. Okay, so we'll be playing a D over that G7. So once again, we've just got G for the C major 7, then we've got E for the A minor 7, we've got A for the D minor 7, and D for the G7. Okay, so let's just try that with the backing track. Okay, so you'll notice there that the first time round I played the high D over the G, and the second time I used the lower D, okay? So as with all of the exercises, you can play these in any register. You know, you don't have to always play the same one. You can play them anywhere on the neck in any register. With that exercise, we just moved that popular perfect fifth pattern around through the chord progression. But there is another perfect fifth pattern that you might not have seen before. It's not that common, but or that popular, but it is really, really useful. So let's have a look at the A. We'll look at it first on an A. So we've got the A there at the 17th fret of the E string. Now we can normally play the fifth there with the E there, that little perfect fifth pattern, but we can also play that E down here, okay? So that gives us this pattern, okay? So if we were to play this down here, we'd be playing the A with the fourth finger and the E up there, second fret of the D string with the first finger. Okay, so that's a perfect fifth pattern, and you know, it's not that common. You don't see it around that much, but it is really, really useful because it allows us to stay in one position. So now, instead of moving that pattern around, we can just stay in one position, you know, without moving the hand. So up here, there's the fifth pattern, there's the fifth pattern. The same again on the D, and then the G, we're back to the normal fifth pattern that we played before. So my hand has not moved there. It's all stayed in that one position rather than thinking of this moving around, okay? So obviously we're not going to be playing root and then fifth, but what it does is it allows us to see all of those notes all in that one position. So now, when we play the over the C major 7, we want the G, we play that one. Then when we want the E over the A minor 7, we can play that E there. Then when we want the A over the D minor 7, we play the A there. And then for the D over the G, we can play that one there. So, with the backing track. Okay, so obviously this only applies if you are really strictly looking at this in terms of fretboard patterns. The ultimate way to do this is to just know your intervals, okay, by note name. So if you know that a perfect fifth from A is E, it doesn't matter what pattern you're looking at. You just think E, 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 you know, E. Whichever E you want, you just pick that out, okay? So even though it is possible to do this just thinking of the fretboard patterns, I would strongly advise you to try and learn your intervals by note name. And if you need to do that, then there's an ebook over at TalkingBass.net which deals with spelling drills. And you might have seen one of my other lessons on spelling drills. And that's a really good way of learning these interval patterns. So lastly, for exercise 4, we can pick out the 7th of each of the chords, okay? So let's just run through those. So for C major 7, we know that there's a major 7th in there, okay? So if we look at the C there, the major 7th pattern. Okay, so you need to know that pattern there. So it's, you know, think of an octave and then just think of the next fret down. Okay, so that's the major 7. Then for A minor 7, we have a minor 7 in there, okay? So A, and then there's the minor 7 interval. So it's the same fret, just 2 strings along. Then D minor 7, look for the D, and then the minor 7 interval. So we're looking again, same fret, 2 strings along. And then for G7, a dominant 7 chord that has a minor 7 interval, the flat 7 in there. So again, we're looking at that same fret, 2 strings along. So that's the F. So the notes in there, for the C major 7, we have a B. For the A minor 7, we have a G. For the D minor 7, we have a C. And for the G7, we have an F. And if you want to do that by note name, just think of the letter preceding the chord name, okay? So for a C, the letter before a C is a B. For an A minor 7, the letter before A is G. You know, for a D, the letter before that is C, and for a G, the letter before it is F. So that's a very quick way of being able to, you know which ones are the 7ths in there. And of course, if we tried this in a different key, you'd have to know which sharps are which. But, you know, that's just another way of doing it. So let's try that with the backing track. So for that exercise, you'll notice that I kept those notes in a higher register on the D and G strings, and that's so that it doesn't get too muddy and too dissonant a sound. The 7ths are great to use, but you have to use them with a little caution. By definition, the 7th carries some dissonance that we'll want to resolve, and by hanging on them like this for a fair bit, we get that dissonant spice really that wants to resolve. So you just have to be a little bit more careful with them. But as you can hear, they've got a lot of colour in there, okay? And that's why people say that the 3rd and the 7th, they're the colour tones in the chord. So if you really want to land on something that's got a little bit more colour to it, land on those 3rds and the 7ths. The root note, that always sounds a little bit dull, as we saw. And then for the 5th, that's okay. Not as colourful as the 3rd and the 7th, but, you know, it's okay. So try playing through those 4 exercises with the backing track until you can comfortably isolate the chord tones for each chord on the fly. Then try different positions on the neck and different chord progressions. It's a good test for your knowledge of chord tones. Now once you can play those notes in isolation, you can start to mix them all up and you can start to use them as start and end notes for all your phrases. And that's the way to begin freeing yourself from the shackles of that root note. Okay, so I hope that helps with learning your chord tones and isolating them on the fly. So please like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also remember the lesson material is all available to download from TalkingBass.net. So you can download the PDF and the backing track, and you can also subscribe for free to gain access to all those other bass resources. Okay? See you later!